So, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Sabita Sawhney. I'm a professor at Maharishi University of Management, where I teach courses in operations management, lean management, and marketing management. My area of specialization is actually lean management. And so I'm going to run a 4-day workshop on lean management, and I'll briefly go over what we are going to do on each day. Today we are going to understand some basic tools, some basic, lean basics. The next time we meet, which is on the 6th of March, we are going to understand flow and value stream, and we will do a little bit of value stream mapping. Don't worry if you don't understand what I'm talking about right now, and if I say value stream mapping, because as we move along, the terminology will become very familiar to you. March 13th, I'm going to talk a little bit about the lean toolkit. What are some tools we can use to make a process lean? And there are several tools, but we'll handpick some important ones that you can use in making your process, optimizing your process, streamlining your process. And finally, on day 4, we will explore together what a lean enterprise is and how you can bring about changes in your own organization and make your organization a lean enterprise. So that's the agenda. This is just something I came across and I thought I would share. We've heard about this for years and decades, and every time somebody talks about, are you the optimist? For you the glass is half full, are you the pessimist? And now we've added another angle to it. I think as a lean thinker, you don't look at the glass half full or empty, but you really wonder, why is the glass so big if we only have so much water in it? And those are some things that I want to draw your attention to, and my endeavor is that by the end of this workshop, you are thinking like a lean thinker. Everything that you look at, you question and you say, how can we make this better? Or why haven't we made this process better? Or what are some things we can do to make the process better? So today, the objective is we'll talk a little bit about what is lean. We will also talk about what are the different type of activities in a process, what are some value-added activities versus non-value-added activities, and then finally we will do what is known as a stakeholder analysis, where you really get an understanding of who your customer is. Because it's really important for every organization to know who the customer is and what is the value that the customer wants from your company. I can do amazing things, but if there is no demand, if the customers don't want the amazing things that I'm doing, chances are my business will not flourish. So it's extremely important. The starting point, the ending point of lean management is getting a good understanding of your customer. So there are actually techniques that you can use to understand your customers. So I will go through those briefly. But what sort of a professor would I be if I didn't send you home with some homework? So being true to my profession, I'm also going to send you home with a little bit of homework so that when we meet next time, you've already done a little bit of work and then we'll build on that. Sounds like a good idea? Yes? Okay. So let's get started. A lot of people think that lean only applies to manufacturing. And Veda said that, he did his MBA some time back, and that time lean was something new and, didn't know much about it. And I'm glad that you're here to, update the information. Now lean is mainstream. In fact, if you don't apply lean, chances are that you're struggling with a lot of issues which could very easily be got rid of. Right? If you understand lean, if you understand the process. So now lean is mainstream. It's successfully adopted by companies. Doesn't matter whether you're for-profit, non-for-profit, whether you're a public enterprise, a private enterprise, et cetera, right? It applies. In fact, interestingly, it can even apply to your life. So it's also something that you can undertake on an individual level. One of the things that I ask my students to do when I'm teaching lean management is also put attention on yourself. So yes, our work area, we are trying to streamline and make it very efficient, but how about ourselves? Do we spend hours on Facebook, etc., right? If we start monitoring it, if we start putting attention on it, every student I've met in my life who's taken a lean class with me, they say, gosh, this was a life-changing experience on so many levels because I've changed my individual side, my personal life as well, right? So it applies to everyone. So Lean is essentially a process improvement tool. That's what you have to, if there's anything you're going to remember from today's class, the important thing to remember is that it's totally process oriented. It's very important for us to understand, where is the value being created? How is the value being created? And value, remember I said, is from the customer's point of view. That we are able to give something that the customer is willing to pay for, that they deem as valuable from our company. So it's important to understand where the most value is being created and how can we continue to do it while minimizing resources. And the resources could be many. It could be our time, it could be our effort, it could be financial, there are financial implications to it. So how can we minimize our resources and keep improving on the value that we are giving to our customers? Now you might say then, what is a process? So a process is a series of steps and decisions that go together from point A to point Z and everything in between. That's a process. So even when you got up, there's some things you do every morning. You get up and you do certain activities, have your breakfast, do certain other activities, drive to work. All this is a process. But we just do it because that's what we do. But if you start paying attention to it and you start thinking of, okay, so why do I do this before this? Chances are that you may not have an answer. This is what you've seen being done by your parents, by your colleagues, by your peers, by your friends, and so you just do it, right? So the process is looking at the number of steps and the decisions we take in each step, which gets us from point A to Z. It could be a full day in your own life. It could be a shift at your workplace. It could be an entire day's worth of activities that you do. And every tangible output, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, is created or is a result of a process. And interestingly, 85% of the opportunities to improve our resources, whether it's time or the bottom line, etc., is within our reach because it's all based on the process, right? And that's why it's so important to understand the process. Edward Deming, are you familiar with, anybody's heard of Edward Deming? He's the quality guru. And he actually said, if you cannot describe what you do as a process, you don't know what you're doing. Because if you just talk in terms of your own activities and you don't understand how your activities fit in with the company's process, then chances are you're not very clear what you're doing or how you're doing it, right? So it's really important, once again, to know what the process is. So Lean, it's all about employee empowerment. Employee engagement. Lean is about training people to do their job and to do it well, to empower people to understand what is working in the process and what is not. So all of us have computers, right? We all have computers, we all have cars. Have you ever sat in a car and you're in somebody else's car and they start the car and then they say, oh, I think there's something wrong with the car. Now you haven't heard anything. It seems like a normal way they've started the car, but the person behind the wheel knows that there's something wrong with the car. Or you're sitting with somebody and they boot their computer and they say, oh, there's something wrong. And you say, why do you say that? And they say, it doesn't sound right. And you say, oh, but it sounds fine to me, or the car sounds. The person who's using their car, their computer, actually know what is wrong with their computer or the car. Similarly, the person who's actually doing a certain activity, or this is their job, really are the people who can fix the issues with that particular activity, right? So Lean again talks about empowerment of the employees. Train them so that they know what they're doing and make sure that they are the leaders of making change in that particular aspect of the process or that step of the process or the whole process. Another thing is that we actually in Lean talk about metrics. So remember, whatever you cannot measure, you cannot improve. Do you agree with me? I might say we want to improve our quality. What does that mean? And what is the term quality to begin with? It could be, it's a shooting target. It could mean different things to different people. So it's really important that we should be able to measure. And once you can measure, then you say, okay, if 10 people come to this session versus now 20 people who are coming to this session, if we are measuring, we can actually see the end result a little bit more clearly. So lean is about using metrics, but also about sustaining the results. Lean is not a one-time shot that you do and then you forget about it and then you go back to your good old ways of doing things. It's about making sure that the improvements are sustainable, right? So employee empowerment, making sure that metrics are used, you measure every change that you're hoping to make, and then that way you can see the output in front of you and celebrate that you're actually making changes. The other thing we have to keep in mind is that lean characterizes activities into two types. There are value-added activities and there are non-value-added activities. And I'll talk a little bit more about what value-added and non-value activities are. And finally, lean focuses on eliminating everything that is non-value added. And you improve your process once you see and understand that we do some things just because we do them. We inherited this job. Somebody told me this is how we do it. And so I continued to do it, and it may just be non-value added. So why am I wasting my time, my resources to do something that is not adding value? Right? So lean is really clear that there are these types of activities. So here is an example just about why use lean. Right? So look at the hard work that they're putting in, and when this gentleman is offering them some wheels, the two say, no thank you, we are really busy. Do less and accomplish more. That is actually the slogan that works with lean. And do less doesn't mean that now I'm going to do half the job. Do less just means that I will not have to work so hard to achieve something or accomplish something, because now I'll have a good process in place, right? So I don't have to put in so much effort to accomplish. If I have a good process, I need to use very little effort, and I will get better results than what I did originally. So there are 5 main steps to becoming lean. Number 1, identify value. And keep in mind, this value is what you provide, but the customers demand. In today's world, if you're not giving value to your customer, it's a highly competitive world we live in. Chances are that they're going to move to a different company just because you are not giving value. So this number 1 step, but you can only give value if you know what the customer wants, right? Is identify value. Once I know this is what is required of me, then I can totally deliver that, right, with a good process. So this is what we're going to do today, talk a little bit about value. Second step is map the value stream, which we will start on March 6th, and also do a little bit of create flow on March 6th. Then March 13th, we are going to talk about establish pull. And finally, on March 20th, we are going to talk about seek perfection. Yes, so today we are going to primarily focus on identifying value. What is value? What are different activities that constitute, value added versus non-value added? So what is value? It's information or material in a form that customer is willing to pay for. It's defined by the customer, and it's provided by it could be the manufacturer, it could be wherever you're giving something of value to the customer, right? It doesn't have to be manufactured, it could be services. So defined by the customer, created by the producer, and I've talked about this a little bit. Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric, said, the value decade is upon us. If you can't sell a top quality product at the world's lowest price, you're going out of the game. In this case, value is the low prices, right? Walmart talks of price, the cheapest price in everybody, in every hand, right? We can give you the lowest price of every product, we can make it. So the value they are offering is low price. But that is not the only thing that we want as customers, right? So we need to identify as people who are providing the value that what is it that the customers want. So there are 3 types of process activities. Remember I talked Every tangible product or service that we are providing is an output of a process. Within that process, there are 3 different types of activities. And these are value-added activities. Lean wants us to optimize on these activities. We have essential non-value-added activities. And Lean says minimize these as far as possible. And then we have something known as non-value-added activities. And Lean tells us to eliminate these. Also known as non-value-added activities, also known as waste. So remember the terminology Lean. And when we walked in, there was a reference to, oh, is this a weight loss class? And I said, it is for companies. It is for lean organization is a successful organization, right? And it all begins from knowing wherein lies the success. And the success lies in understanding your customers and only having value-added activities and perhaps a little bit of essential non-value-added activities in your process. And do away with the non-value-added activities, right? So value-added are activities that a customer is happy to pay for, is willing to pay for, right? The customer is coming to your business because they are getting a certain value from your business. Whether it's product features, whether it's price, whether it's fabulous delivery system that you have. We use FedEx for what reason? Why do we use FedEx? We are willing to pay a little more, but we are happy to use FedEx for service, you said? For fast and accurate delivery, right? So we are happy to use that, even if it means we are willing to pay a little bit more. Also, did you know that FedEx has almost 99.9% accuracy in how they deliver their products? So not only do we want speed, but we also want consistency. We want to make sure that if I have actually sent a package somewhere, I want to be sure that it will reach that person on the day that I want the packet to reach. I mean, it could still reach, but a week later, a day later, Christmas Eve, no packet reaching, that's definitely not good value, right? So it's also, making sure that it reaches in the form that you want. So address the form function, address the form, features or functions that the customer desires. This is value added. So I'll share a funny story with you. So after my husband finished his PhD, we finally moved into our own house. He was at Boston University. Obviously, we were staying in a rented small little apartment. But he got his PhD, he got his job, and we thought we had arrived. Because first time, a good job. And so now we wanted to do up our place a little bit. And I said we needed a washing machine because I was really tired of going to the community place to do our washing and things. So we went to this place, Sears actually, to look at some washing machines. And we looked at many features, and for some reason I gravitated to the machine that said, besides all the settings, it said slow, extra slow setting. It said the slowest slow, extra slow setting. And my husband said, so why do you want this one? And I said, think of the features, Rajiv. This is giving 4 features. This machine is giving the slow, extra slow feature. And he asked the salesperson, he said, what's the difference between like the slow and the extra slow? And the salesperson had no idea. But I was adamant. If I was going to get a washing machine, I wanted more features. Because for me, that was going to be good value. Well, yours truly won. We got a washing machine home with the slow, extra slow feature, never used. But I'm just telling you that sometimes we get attracted by, your machine offers 4 features, this machine offers 6 features. Now, is there really value from that? But some of us like some more features, right? So that's what value is all about. Obviously, they did their homework, and they knew that there were some people who would want the slow, extra slow feature in the machine, and that's why they made it, right? You're nodding, so you know what I'm talking about. So that's they're addressing the form, the features, the functions. In our cell phones, one would say a phone is a phone, right? But we are looking for certain features, right? And if that particular phone offers the feature, then there's value for us. Directly contributes to customer expectations. Now, certainly, when we got the washing machine home, we wanted the washing machine to do its job, basically wash and do a good job of washing. So that's another thing that, does the product do what it claims to do? Does it get that extra dirt out? By then we had 2 kids, and I was a soccer mom, and there were clothes coming home with lots of mud and grit and blood and many things that come along with soccer uniform. So yes, that machine did a good job. Okay. Does it actually transform a product or service? This is actually the key. Whatever this activity is, does it change something about that service or something about that product? And I will explain in the next slide. And finally, does it do things correctly the first time? Then it's a value-added activity. When there's no rework, when I am not sending the returns to scrap, because guess what? We have to bear the cost of all the returns that are coming. And I mean an organization, right? But if we do things right the first time, chances are products will not be returned, right? And that's how it impacts our bottom line. So that's as far as value added. So when you are going through your exercise, when we are crafting out your process at your workplace, you're looking for value added exercise. You're going to ask these questions and say, does this activity really transform what I'm trying to do? Then it's value added, and it must stay. Does it allow me to do some things that the customer wants? Then it must stay, right? Now let's go to the other extreme, the non-value added. And this is the most interesting. Could be stopped, and it would be invisible to the end user or customer. So I'm doing all these fabulous things, and then one day I don't do, and nobody even notices that I haven't done it. Right? Therein lies your key. Obviously, remove it. You're wasting your time, and you're wasting, resources to do something. It requires extra time, effort, or resources, so it needs to go. If it requires extra resources, extra time. And finally, consumes resources without creating value for the customer. So here I'm sitting and gift wrapping things, and the customer basically wants to look at the product inside, and they want to open the gift wrap because they want to look at the product. Then guess what? That's non-value added. The customers want to touch, feel, see the product, but we are encasing them in this beautiful, sparkly, nice, gift wrapping paper, but they don't want it. So that's again non-value added, so it must go, right? So are we clear about this? Because this is perhaps the most important aspect of lean. Keep what is value added and remove what is non-value added. So we are going to do a small little exercise. And I want to ask you, so if it's depositing a check into your bank account, what are some steps that go into that? What are some steps that typically go into depositing a check, starting from, remember, point A?
Signing the check.
Sorry?
Signing the check.
Signing the check. Okay. What else?
Need the account number, the deposit slip, need to fill it out, date, amount.
Okay. Very good. Steph?
Some banks let you take a photo and you don't have to go anywhere. You can submit.
Very good. What else? So remember, we are talking of a process, right? From point A. So yes, the signing comes in somewhere in between, but there's some steps before that. I'm talking of depositing a check into the bank account, right? So let's look at this. Process steps to make a bank deposit. So these are all the steps. So first, just look at these. Drive to bank. From my home, it takes me about 10 minutes. Wait in line, sometimes. It could take 5 minutes because I always, I also have a cafe. This is in where the old telegroup building used to be. So sometimes from there, I'm coming to the square, and when I reach there, that's also the time around little after 2. For some reason, a lot of people are always there, and there's a line of sorts. So let's say it takes me about 5 minutes. Complete transaction, 1 minute, because I go to the teller, give the check, and then I drive home 10 minutes, right? So these are the activities started from drive to bank, wait in line, complete transaction, drive home. Now let's look at what is value added and what is non-value added. Driving to bank, non-value added. To the process of making the deposit, right? Driving to the bank is non-value added. Wait in line, non-value added. Complete transaction, 1 minute. This is when actually I'm doing something. I have gone to deposit the check. So that is the only value added. And then I drive home 10 minutes, non-value added. So look at this. 4% of total time is the only value added component of this entire process. And 96% of the total time is non-value added. So today when you go home, well, not today, because it will be around 8 something when you get home, but you'll have an entire week. So I'll tell you what the homework is. We'll go over that so that that's how you're going to look at your process. So at your workplace, you're really going to say, this is my work. Depends on, sometimes people are looking at the process of the entire department. Other times they're just looking at what they do. Sometimes they want to look at the whole organization. And that's why I wanted to know a little bit about your background, because depending on that, the exercise will be done. Here's the second example. Enter deposit info into smartphone. For some reason, I have a smartphone, but I still go to the bank. And you might think, so you're a professor, you teach lean management, but you still take 10 minutes to go to the bank? I'm a creature of habit. So I still go to the bank, and I like that whole interaction. And I go and I give and I chat and I talk about the world issues and life and just generally brag about my kids a little bit, right? So I do those things, but you're absolutely right. But even here, we are going to look at value added versus non-value added. Enter deposit info into smartphone, 30 seconds. Value added or non-value added? It's actually non-value added. Take picture of check, 1 minute, non-value added. Complete transaction, 30 seconds, that is value added. Because that is precisely what you are trying to do. You're trying to deposit that check into your account, right? So that is the only thing which is value added, right? So again, it's important we're going to do some more exercises and then you'll be clear about it. But there is a third type of activity, and this is known as essential non-value added. And Lean says to try and minimize this, but you cannot remove it. And this is something like activities that don't contribute to customer satisfaction, but must be done to comply with regulations, organizational policies, etc. Right? So try and minimize as much as possible, but because you have to, for regulations, there are certain forms that you have to fill and keep. You cannot just remove everything because you think. So these are known as essential non-value added. So what you're going to do is keep those, but minimize as much as possible. And periodically, you still need to examine these essential non-value added activities and say, is there a better way that I can maybe maintain these records? Is there something else we can do? So those are some questions that you need to ask. So I'm just going to repeat for a minute. We talked a little bit about what Lean is and why Lean is important. Then now we've discussed the 3 different type of activities. We talked of value added, which is what Lean says you need to do what? Optimize. Keep these, definitely keep these, because these are value added activities. We also talked briefly about non-value added, and what does Lean say we need to do? Remove them, because they're non-value added. They are actually eating your resources. You're working, think of that little cartoon we saw with the 2 wheels. Those are non-value added. We are putting in so much effort to get the cart forward when there is a better way of doing it, right? So non-value added. And then you have essential but non-value added activities that you want to try and minimize. Okay, so here is an activity that I have for you to do, and we will see if we have about 10 minutes. If you would just take one, and I want to make sure that, yes, and just pass it around to everybody. So all I'm asking you to do is, I've written out some situations. You just need to do it by yourself, do it with the person sitting next to you if you desire. Just sort of identify, is it value added, non-value added, or essential non-value added? Because I think it's really important, just that activity, Do you think this is something that is typically, very broadly speaking, value added or not? And then we'll, so everybody will take one sheet. And if you like, just go ahead and we'll take about 2-3 minutes. Unfortunately, I don't have so much time. So you're also welcome to take this home. So after about 2 minutes, we will just quickly discuss what we think might be value added or non-value added. So let's look at these. Maintenance of office equipment. Do you think it's value added, non-value added, essential, non-value added?
Essential non-value added.
You guys are brilliant. Fabulous. Okay, this is a confidence booster for the teacher. Perfect. Okay, now all of you, if you'd said value added, I would have wept in a corner right now. So this is good. Okay, number 2. 2-year supply of a form in the filing cabinet. Non-value added. Oh my Lord, you guys are good. Okay, taking customer order.
Value added.
Definitely value added, right? Because if you remove that, then you're in trouble.
I mark it as non-value added because I would have expected you to say we could have had it on the website. So the act of taking the order.
You're still taking an order, even if it's on the website. Let's say it's Sabby's, my place, my restaurant. You have to take an order to be able to deliver whatever order you're taking for. So it's value added. Okay, number 4, retyping the information. Non-value, retyping. You've typed it, it is non-value added because you're wasting time. Retyping the same thing. It's, in other words, reinventing the wheel. Yes, non-value added. Hunting for the correct paper for the copy machine. It's actually essential because it's, if you didn't have the right paper for, then that means, but it is non-value added, but without that you cannot make copies.
No, but it's the hunting part.
Yeah, the hunt. So it is sort of, but if you don't get it, you cannot use it. So it's bordering on non-value added. Uh-huh.
If it was in the right place, you wouldn't have to hunt for it.
Yes, that's what we are now. I've purposely put a couple of these because I use the word hunting. So the importance here is that you need that paper, but non-value added is that if you were organized and you had a good process, you would not have to hunt for it. So we are going to revisit, that's why it's carefully worded, that you're hunting for that paper. Shows what a disorganized office this is to begin with. Okay, so print essential non-value added. Yes, printing a timesheet, then scanning and mailing. Non-value added, right? Printing it, then scanning it, you can pretty much. Okay, so we'll stop here, but we will pick this up because I just want to do a little bit more before I send you home. And I only have 5 minutes. Yes? I hope I'm not going so fast that I'm losing you in the pipeline somewhere. Yes, we're doing fine?
And you only have 5 minutes because after that it's no longer value adding?
After that, some of you need to get home, that's why. So remember, we said first step of lean is identify value. And you also remember I said where the value comes from. Who is desiring that value is your customer. Yes? Customers, or another term that we use quite often in lean is stakeholders. Anybody who has anything to do with your company, your organization, those are your stakeholders or your customers. And when we talk of customers, there are 2 types of customers in every organization. You're familiar with that? And I don't mean the finicky and the non-finicky. I don't mean the cranky or the sweet customers. I mean the 2 types of customers are your internal customers and your external customers. In a process, when I'm doing something, think of Subway, right? There are Subway, the eating joint. So there are, I don't know if I should categorize it as a restaurant or so the eating joint, yes, Subway. So the fast food restaurant, yes. So you place an order, yes? You're all familiar with Subway? That's why I'm using an example of Subway. So you place an order, and then that person does a certain number of activities, and then there is a person at the cash counter, right? And that person does the cash transaction. So the person at the cash transaction, their customer, internal customer, is the person who's taken the order and done that whole process. as well as the person who's going through that entire, asking you what bread you want, and what do you want, and what dressing do you want, etc., etc. Their internal customer is the cashier. Now, unless you know what your internal customer is doing or the kind of how they want your output to be, it can become quite sort of difficult to work in an environment where you don't know who your internal next person is. So it's very important to do things in a form that the next person requires. I'll share an example. My daughter is actually working in Iowa City. She's public health, in the area of public health. And she recently got a job where she is working in the Iowa State Public Health Department. So she came home for the weekend and she said, Mama, I have to get this report done. And I said, what is this report about? And she said, oh, my boss wants this report. So I said, okay, and why does she need this report? She said, because she doesn't have time to go over the whole thing. She's going to quickly look at the report, and then that gets her up to speed of what's been happening in this week. So I said, oh, fabulous. So I said, but you're giving so many pages of report. And she said, it's a pretty exhaustive report. And I told my daughter, I said, if your boss doesn't have time to look at a lengthy report, and if you give her certain number of pages, that's not going to be helpful. And she said, oh, but when I took this job, I was told that I have to write this report. So I said, when you go back, check with your boss if she would like just a table with important things put, so that if she doesn't have time and she can just glance at it and it gets her up to speed. So my daughter did that. She's a good girl. She did exactly that, checked with her boss, and the boss said, this is brilliant. Why did we not think of doing something like this? So that's an internal customer. But we not only have internal customers, we also have the final customers. After all, the public health, right? We are their customers. State stakeholders are the customers. So it's important to understand in every business who are the internal customers and who are our external customers. And if we want good value in a process, we have to understand both. We have to generate reports in a way that the next customer can use, or we have certain expectations that the person who's giving us the report is doing it in a way that's value added, that I can quickly look at it. So what we are trying to do with this is, number one, identify who our stakeholders are, key stakeholders, and what is the value they expect. So this is pretty much your homework. You're going to sit down in a quiet room and say, what is the process that we have, or I have, that I do, or the activities? Who am I doing it for? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this in this form? Is it just because I inherited this job and they told me this is how we've been doing things? Or is there a better way of doing this, right? Can we provide the same value in a better form? So that's number one. And then you need to prioritize the stakeholders. So you have some more important stakeholders or people who are closer to your process versus the others. Yes? And I'm going to explain a little bit more. So identify stakeholders, determine what value they want from your process. Yes? And here I have some examples. Your company, you have employees, you have investors, you have government, you have community, consumers, environment, industry association, extended organization. So these are just some examples, right? And then you use what is known as a stakeholder analysis and I'll tell you what the stakeholder analysis are. There are actually many techniques that are available to us now, just so that we can understand who our stakeholders are, who our customers are, and what is the value that they're getting. One is known as the onion model, and literally, you've seen an onion. There are layers to that onion. You have a core, and there are many layers to it. So that can get a little it takes a couple of sessions for me to really explain that to you, but we will do one which is a little different. Then we have a stakeholder power interest grid, and then the final one is stakeholder assessment map. So these are just 3 techniques that I picked up, and we will focus more on the stakeholder power and interest grid. So once you've written out all your stakeholders, the important stakeholders, you need to categorize them into these 4 quadrants. So at the bottom on the x-axis, we have interest of stakeholders. So this is low interest, high interest. And on the other quadrant, we have the influence or power of stakeholders. We have low power or low influence, and we have higher power or lot of power. So for example, if somebody has high interest in what the process is, or what I'm doing, or what my process is, right? What our company is doing. And they also have high influence. They need to be managed very closely. We need to pay more attention to what they want from us because they have a lot of power, as well as they have a lot of interest in what we are trying to do. On the other hand, if you have low interest and low power, you have to put in minimum effort. Now, when I was looking at this, I thought, where would, if I am doing this and I'm part of an organization, where would my family fit in? The family would fit in a lot of interest in what I'm doing, but not necessarily any power in what I'm doing or how they can change my process because I'm at a company, right? I'm doing some work. So then I just need to keep them informed. Half the time in families, people are like, I don't know what he or she is doing all day, working on something, and we never know what they're doing, but they're so busy. Keep them informed, right? But are they your stakeholders? Yes, but not as important as maybe the ones who have great power in what you're doing. Maybe your boss has a lot of interest in what you're doing and also have power in what you're doing, right? In which case you need to manage them closely. This is your last one. You do a stakeholder assessment map, but we are not going to spend too much time on this. It's basically, so your homework. Who are the main stakeholders or customers for if you want to make lean the organization, then you write about your customers for the organization. If it's just your department, or it could even be just your process. So spend a little bit of time and think in terms of who are the internal customers, who are the external customers, who are the people who can impact what we are doing and they want certain type of value. Then identify whether they are internal customers or external customers and what value do they want from your process. So that is your homework. And how many of you think you will be here for the March 6th class? Yes? Yes! That's good. And we'll probably have more, but then they'll just have to do, minus my charming personality, they'll just have to make do with the PowerPoints. Thank you very much. This is fabulous. Thank you.